Hi friends, it's Deanna Williston with our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm here today with one of our book previews. It's an unboxing. I haven't read it yet. For once, I have a really good reason for not having read it yet. Really good reason. My parish is actually using this book in a leadership development program, and so I was given it for free, but not from the publisher, but from my local parish. They're starting a new relational leadership ministry program. I don't know if I've talked about it before, but I probably have. I know a lot of my friends in my prayer group know. I don't entirely understand the program or what's going on, and a lot of people don't. There's a lot that isn't said outright to us that are in the program, and people are confused. They're worried about the commitment, and just some people have a lot of stress about taking on something else because most of us, I guess, already are running some sort of ministry, whether it's the Adoration Chapel or they're in the young adult ministry or whatever it is. Like I do First Saturdays. There's people that run the Seven Sisters. So there's people already doing ministries within the church that are being asked to take on this training. It's just once a month. It's not a big commitment, but so many people are freaking out. And the way I see the training is that it's going to better equip us to do what we're already doing. And so I think it's a great idea. But I know it's scary for a lot of people, so if I can break down the book a little bit more and help people see it's not completely scary, I'm totally going to go for that. So this is one of those books that has one of those velvety covers, even though it's paperback. You know, I love that. I have no idea why, but I like that. On the back, it's listed as Catholicism/spirituality at the price of $18.95. So it was an expensive book. It is by Sophia Institute Press, so it's not some fly-by-night or print by yourself that you're then left wondering. It's by Sophia Institute Press. Let's read a little bit more from the back, and then we'll go in and look at the title page and get all that stuff. It says, the key to happiness from one who found it in joyful abundance, St. Therese of Lisieux. Well, who doesn't want the key to happiness? So even if you don't stick with the leadership program, hey, you're going to have the key to happiness. I mean, that's amazing. It says this spiritual classic has long been beloved by Catholics for its wondrous distillation of the teachings of St. Therese of Lisieux into a reader-friendly set of meditations. It's perfect as a personal retreat when you have only a few moments to spare each day, and for spiritual reading anytime and anywhere. Father Jean C.J. de Elbe, a French priest deeply imbued with St. Therese's spirit, brings you St. Therese's teachings on God's love and the confidence in him that it should inspire in your soul humility, peace, and fraternal charity. The apostolate, the cross, and what it means truly to abandon yourself to divine providence. I believe in love has helped countless souls embark on the way to the Father. It will help you focus on him throughout each day, rest in him amid your troubles, and live joyfully with him at every moment. Those are some pretty big promises. I'm going to say right now, I don't know that I've ever seen this particular thing before, and I'm a little weirded out by it. They have broken off and hyphenated words at the ends of the line on the back cover. I don't know that I've ever seen that. Could they have found a different way? Maybe they could have made this print a little bit smaller. Like, why are you hyphenating words already? That's a red sign of formatting for me. You know I don't like that. Then they have two small reviews here. Whoever reads this book attentively and prayerfully will grow in the love of God and even desire to be a saint. And that's by Father Kenneth Baker, S.J., Editor Emeritus, Homiletic and Pastoral Review. And then devotees of St. Therese will be delighted with this book, but there is something in it for all who seek holiness, the perfection of love. And that is Father Killian Healy, O'Carm, author of Awaking Your Soul to the Presence of God. A little bit more about the author. It says Father Jean C.J. de Albi was a French priest who beautifully conveys in this book the spirit of St. Therese of the Child Jesus and her message of joyful confidence and total abandonment to the heart of Jesus. Again, it's by Sophia Institute Press. Very interesting. Actually, the back of the book makes me scratch my head just a little bit more. I don't know. But I see, if it is a series of short reflections, why the parish picked this particular book for leaders who already are probably overcommitted and doing too much. So maybe the short reflection format was the way to go. That I feel like that probably influenced their choice. And I know that they were looking for something on Saint Therese. We were told that is the method that we're using, the little way, for people in the parish. This is called, yes, I Believe in Love, a personal retreat based on the teaching of Saint Therese of Lisieux. It says it is an English translation by Marilyn Techert and Madeline Stebbins of Croix à la Moore, and was originally published in Chicago in 1974 by Franciscan Herald Press. This 2001 edition by Sophia Institute Press includes minor revisions to the original text. It doesn't tell us what those minor revisions are or what they were. Like was it for more modern spelling conventions or punctuation? It doesn't say what it was. Maybe there were typos. Like, I don't know, and it doesn't tell us here. Here we go. A lot of the information is normally at the bottom of the pages is in the middle, so I was just skipping through it. The Nihil Obstat is by Mark Hagener, OFM, Censor Deputatis. The Imprimatur is by Monsignor Richard A. Rosemeyer, JCD. The Vicar General is Vicar General of the Archdiocese of Chicago, October 4th, 1974. So the Nihil Obstat and Imprimatur are also both from 1974 when it was translated and published by Franciscan Herald Press. Interesting that it was a Franciscan who gave the Nihil Obstat. I'm just saying, that's kind of nice. Nice little bonus for me. This says at the bottom that it is the 27th printing. Whew. And it is dedicated to Mother Claire Marie of the Heart of Jesus. Editor's note. The biblical quotations in the following pages follow the enumeration in the Douay Rheims edition of the Old and New Testaments. Where applicable, quotations have been cross-referenced with the differing names and enumeration in the Revised Standard Version using the following symbol, RSV equals, and then it'll have the equals. Interesting. It's not that difficult, friends. You should learn. Get yourself a Douay Rheims, however you want to pronounce it, translation of the Bible. It's not that much. You can buy it paperback. You can look at it online. I don't think it's going to be that difficult. I do think it's important. Okay, I'm just going to stop and do a side note. You can cover your ears if you really don't want to hear this. But I don't get the change in the names. It drives me literally insane. And there could be a really good reason for it. And I haven't come across it yet. I honestly think the Protestants did it to make a bigger break. And then I think in the 70s, I think we really switched over in the 60s and 70s because we thought we'd be ecumenical. And if we changed the names, hey, then they'd like the Bible, our version of the Bible more, and we could discuss the Bible more with them. So let's just change the numbering of the Psalms that Catholics have always used to accommodate people who have refused Catholic teaching, and then they'll like Catholic teaching. It didn't work. Didn't work. And now it's divided Catholics, traditional Catholics from modern Catholics. And there's no good reason because it didn't break down barriers and walls. It didn't. Maybe there's some people that it helped. I think it's few and far between, and I think it's a loss of a rich legacy. I may look like a fool for saying this. Maybe there's like a really, really great reason for changing the names of all the books. I don't know. I don't get it. I think it was done just to be cool and progressive and hip and make everybody like us. Didn't happen. Okay, done. The table of contents is interesting because it starts halfway down the page. It is set up nice. It's easy to read. Chapter 1's written out, and then the name of the chapter is done in a slightly different font. So, Conference 1, Conference 2. We've seen this before in our Father Armignon book on, it wasn't actually called The End of the World. Our Father Armignon book on the end of the world. It was like the end of the present age and the life of the world to come, something like that, by Father Armignon. He also gave conferences, so it was a book full of conferences. So interesting that this also has conferences. Foreword, preface to the American edition, and then the titles of the conferences are what's important, and so that's in a clearer font. It has our ... with the number, and it's not an extensively long ... So clear and easy to read table of contents. But why did it start in the middle of the page and then it still had to go on the other one? It might have all fit on one page if you put it, whatever. I don't get that. Because now look, the foreword also starts in the middle of the page. Why are you starting in the middle of a page? I don't get that. There are 10 conferences. Sorry, I'll try and behave now. The foreword. Let me see. There are the page, I think it's always going to start like that. Very generous margins. So I guess if you like to write in the notes, plenty of room for you to be writing in the notes or in the margins. I'm not sure. That was a stylistic choice. Maybe it's the way the original book was, and they didn't really want to retypeset it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm finding that odd. I'm seeing right away, though, that there are footnotes, not endnotes, footnotes on the bottom of the page. Pretty easy to see. I'm betting these are sequential for the whole book because look how big those numbers get. So they probably aren't by each individual conference. Okay. I haven't found any of those ones that they said was going to reference over to the RSV. Trying to find, okay, so it happened in the Psalms. Psalms 129:7, and then it has RSV Psalm 137. See, so it happened there in the Psalms. Okay, that, again, neither here, you can argue that till the cows come home. People be like, oh, we went back to the original sources in the 70s, and that's the way they had it numbered. The original sources don't exist anymore. There's 2 different versions that appear to have come from some proto-document that doesn't exist, and they broke up the numbering different. It's like, calm down. Don't act like you're better or worse because of the numbering system. I just don't know why we had to jump to a numbering system that the Jews used in the 70s. Was that ecumenical as well? Like, I don't understand. So now if you look at older Catholic readings, the numbering is different from modern Catholic readings. I don't get why we did that. I think we should have stuck with the system. I think it was changed for the sake of change and just silly. Okay, I'm going to try and stop saying that. Because that's not the review of the book. I just find it funny that they're accommodating it here. Foreword. To introduce this book to the reader, we quote a few words from His Holiness Pope Paul VI about divine love. Okay, so what am I saying? This book was printed in 1974. Of course they're going to do those things. Yep. Okay, this is making more sense here. So I don't know. In a discourse to a general audience on June 2nd, 1969, the Holy Father spoke as follows. What is the discovery to which the man of faith comes when he seeks the profound and complete sense of divine revelation? This discovery is love. God has above all revealed himself as being love. The whole history of salvation, the whole gospel is love. We could quote so many pages of scripture here. For example, this one comes to mind. The Lord has appeared from afar to me. Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore have I drawn you, taking pity on you. The whole epic of redemption is love and mercy, the effusion of the love of God upon us, and the history of salvation is summarized in this well-known sentence of St. Paul, that Christ may dwell by faith in your hearts, that being rooted and founded in charity, you may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, to know also the charity of Christ, which surpasses all knowledge, that you may be filled unto all the fullness of God. Let us stop here. We will have said enough about it today, celebrating two feasts, the feast of the Eucharist and of the Sacred Heart, being, so to speak, driven by it towards the prophetic point which presents them and lets us savor, if not comprehend, something of their true religious sense, of their superlative and violent reality. For God so loved, ... And that moves us. Overwhelms us. If we come to the point of comprehending that we are loved to a supreme, unimaginable degree, unto silent, gratuitous, cruel death, to the point of total immolation by him, do we not even know, or if we have known him, whom we have denied and offended, if we come to the point of comprehending that we are the objects of such a love, of so great a love, we cannot remain complacent. Such is the origin of the cult of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Let us remember that the word heart is a symbol, a sign, a synthesis of our redemption viewed from the divine human interior life of Christ. Jesus loved us. The Council, and the footnotes telling us the Second Vatican Council, tells us equally with the heart of a man. And how much? Did you know that? Did you think about that? How are you going to respond? To help us comprehend the love of God for us and to respond to it more fully is the purpose of the conferences contained in this book. Then there is a preface to the American edition. I don't know if the new mic is picking up the dog by barking, but if it is, I apologize. The preface to the American edition. My wife and I were introduced to this book while on a visit to France in 1971, and it made a deep impression on us both. It seemed then, as it seems now, to bring that nourishment for which the whole world is hungering, the divine love of the human heart of Jesus for each single soul. In this little book, so full of the noblest and most tender sentiments, so devoid of any sentimentality, we see, as if for the first time, the unimaginable novelty of such familiar words as God so loved the world. Come unto me. This is my son was dead and is come to life again, was lost and is found. In a gratefully astonished surrender to this love lies the seed of renewal and reconciliation at which the world is in need and expectation. And it is worth remarking that this love, human and divine, this charism, this rushing spirit, this soaring flame, revisited the earth in a place deeply hidden within the structures of the institutional church, which it is so fashionable to despise these days. St. Therese of Lisieux is the principal teacher in this book, and no one could be a better target for much of the modern jargon. Where could one find anyone more deeply buried in structure than she? She was a small member in a small community of little nuns, locked behind their medieval grill, weighed down behind all kinds of rules and regulations, which we are now informed effectively block all fulfillment of personality. St. Therese spent her short and glorious life in what the world can see only as a dark and lifeless cave. And there love was born and lived and shone again, as in that night in Bethlehem, and that other night on Calvary. It does not need special penetration to see that modern man has lost his way in the search for happiness, has alienated himself so profoundly from God that he has become alienated from himself, and is engaged in a sick and futile search for his own identity. What loneliness he suffers! A theme song of desolation reverberates in his soul. He despairingly seeks guidance among those who are quite as lost as he is, and all his chosen guides lead him again to the same abyss from which there seems to be no way of return. In the end, suicide presents itself as the logical answer to those who choose this broad path, as modern literature and the newspapers bear witness. This book comes like heavenly music, saving music, to fill with hope the emptiness of man's heart and to fill it to overflowing. I believe in love as a guide to happiness based on the teaching of one who found it entire, St. Therese of Lisieux. It is also framed for a simple and universal program of spiritual renewal for the laity. God, through his counsel, has announced to us the universal vocation to holiness. If we reply in unconditional and loving confidence, "Behold the servants of the Lord, be it done to us according to your word," the result will be what it has always been in such cases. Again and again, the Word, having become flesh, will dwell among us. Fiat. And this is by H. Lyman Stebbins, Catholics United for the Faith, in August 1974. I don't even know what to make of that. This book is that little preface to the American edition is like a little time capsule, isn't it? It's a time capsule from 1974 when the council had just come out. Probably the revisions to the Mass were trickling in still. And they saw people, they're at a time when the age of Aquarius was failing, that whole summer of love movement, all of that was failing, and people were despairing because they had turned away from God and thought they had found this utopia here on earth. And when they didn't know what to do. And people were so lost, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll weren't the answer, and they didn't know what the answer was. And that's the moment of time when they found this book. So it is a very interesting time. It's a time when these people had hope because the council said we're all called to holiness. And, well, so many people, and I think they were probably on the cusp of this here. So many religious turned in and left. They left their habits behind. They left convents, monasteries, religious orders. They left the priesthood. So many of them turned and said, oh, well, there's a universal call to holiness. I don't need this other life. We all have our own individual vocations, but we're all called to holiness in our own way. At the time, it was so revolutionary an idea, which it's hard for me to imagine. I was very small when this note was written. So that's not a part of my experience. It's hard to look back on it. So that preface is it's such an interesting time capsule. And so I'm kind of hoping in my small group, there will be people there who lived through this time who can really speak to it, because we need to start having more conversations about what happened then and why, what the changes were made, why they were made. Did some work? Did they fulfill their purpose, or were some of them just change for change's sake? And if we can evaluate which was which, maybe we can find and forge a better path forward. I think so many of us look at the traditional Latin Mass and we're looking back to it with such fondness, and we're looking forward to it. We can see the community and the richness of it. But right now, in this moment, most of the people who are going to traditional Latin Mass are people who are choosing it for themselves. People who are highly educated in Latin, who can understand it, who have a love of it, who have a love of the sacred music, whose family maybe perhaps plays it at home. But when it was the universal Mass for the church, not every priest even knew Latin. Not every person in the parish knew Latin and could understand it. So there were definitely deficits there that needed corrected. And instead they threw the baby out with the bathwater. And so maybe we can have an intelligent conversation. What changes were made that make sense? And could there have been something else that would have done the same end without throwing it all away? Like, what are those things? We need to actually, I'm not going to judge right now in this moment and say this one's the answer and not that one. You saw how hot I got about abandoning parts of the translations of the Bible. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have looked at current research and updated them. And you can find Dewey Reams versions that have that now. They've looked at new sources as they become available and added notes and things. And that is possible without throwing away that translation and starting again and just assuming that it was all damaged. Well, St. Jerome said there were moments that weren't good. Well, then we should just throw out every Bible we have. Like, it was just stop. Just stop. So this book seems to have come to us, the American translation, from that moment in time when people had started the experiment and weren't sure how it was going to work. So what a unique moment in time. I'm kind of excited. It's also interesting because they keep talking about Pope Paul VI, and he is very polarizing, but then maybe he wasn't. So here is another one. Conference 1, again, starts out with Pope Paul VI. So when was the French edition was written? Maybe Oh, the original book was published in 1969, and then the American edition was 1974. Well, that's making a little bit more sense then. Okay. I did not catch that. I thought this was an older book like Father Armignon's, like something that St. Therese would have read or interacted with, or the writings were soon after her death or something that's not. So this is a 1969 French edition that has been translated into English. So again, they're talking about Pope Paul VI. So there's opportunities, if you look at this, to have conversations about those papacies about that time. And apparently it's going to come up. It's in Conference 1 on page 3. The page numbers are impossibly tiny, and they are at the bottom middle of the page. So it's going to be hard to find them. You're going to want bookmarks or some kind of a sticky note to put in there, because it's not going to be great. That part's not going to be great. Those page numbers are impossibly tiny. And like I say, they're not just in the middle of the page. They're like up like an inch and in the middle. So they're exceptionally hard to find. If you're going by conference numbers, you can see how tiny that is to read. So again, that's going to be really difficult to find. So you're going to want a bookmark. That's the short version. You're going to want a bookmark. Pope Paul VI addressing the members of Congress on the apostolate of the laity on October 15th, 1967 in St. Peter's, and wishing to summarize what lay spirituality must be, stated, "It will suffice to tell you in a word, only your personal and profound union with Christ will assure the fruitfulness of your apostolate, whatever it may be." Okay, so it's speaking right there to leadership, so I can see why they picked it for our church. During this retreat, I intend to talk to you about confident love, following the teachings of St. Therese of Lisieux, of whom Pope Pius XII said, "She rediscovered the gospel itself, the very heart of the gospel." Could we imagine a stronger, more eloquent, more convincing affirmation of the divine depth of a doctrine? And this from the very mouth of the Pope himself. She has rediscovered the very heart of the gospel. I have entitled the first conference, Love for Love, Prior Delexit Nos. God loved us first that we might love him. This is the explanation of it all, of the creation, the incarnation, Calvary, the resurrection, the Eucharist. Creation, if we may express it in this way, is the infinite love which overflowed from him. God created us out of love for himself and out of love for his creatures, whom he made in order to fill them with his love and his mercy. It is because he is good that we exist, said St. Augustine. He did not create us out of necessity. He did not need us. He did not create us out of justice. He owed us nothing. No, it is to his sheer love that we owe our existence. St. John the Apostle, who while leaning on the breast of Jesus in the cenacle, perceived the beating of his heart and at the same time the secrets of his love, has revealed them all to us in his first epistle when he says, Deus caritas est, God is love. God created us in the state of original justice, a marvelous state of equilibrium and harmony, our lower faculties perfectly subjected to our higher faculties, which were perfectly subjected to God. Then came the sin which upset all that, which deeply wounded our nature, and which made us victims of concupiscence, of suffering, of sickness, and death. Yet even so, God is so truly love itself that even before promulgating the punishment, he announced the woman and her son victors over the serpent. If Adam had understood this, even before leaving the earthly paradise, he would have been able to utter the astonishing cry of the church on Holy Saturday. O truly necessary sin of Adam, which was wiped out by the death of Christ. O happy fault which merited such a Redeemer. Felix culpa, happy fault, which has meant for us so many sufferings. It is true, but so marvelous a redemption. And because God is charity, he gave the world his beloved Son. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. That first sin, rejection of an infinite love, could not be repaired by any but by an infinite love. The Word of God became incarnate in order that love might triumph in him and through him. Okay, friends, I think that's a pretty good sample. Let's look roughly how long these conferences are. So this one is page 3 to page 24. So we're going to say roughly 20 pages. Let's check the next. Let's just kind of look at the table of contents. Are they roughly 20 pages? Again, there's very little print on any given page. Yeah, I'm going to say roughly 20 to 30 pages each, it seems here. The last one's a bit the conference on the Eucharist is a bit longer. Let me give you some of those titles. Love for Love, Humble Confidence, Unshakable Confidence, Abandonment to Jesus, Great Desires, Humility, Peace, Fraternal Charity, The Apostolate, The Cross, the Eucharist, Jesus, Mary, and the Saints. Is there anything at the end? No, it just ends. There's a little bit on Sophia Institute back here in the back, that it's a nonprofit institution that seeks to nurture the spiritual, moral, and cultural life of souls and to spread the gospel of Christ in conformity with the authentic teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. It talks here a little bit about Crisis Magazine and Catholic Exchange as well, and the Sophia Institute for Teachers. All their websites are given here in the back, and perhaps I'll put that down in the comments. I'll put my little sticky note there so I can remember to do that for you. You can see the language is pretty accessible. Whenever they use a quote, the quote is given, it's footnoted, but they give it to you at least once. So that's pretty handy. Whether it's St. Augustine, whoever it is, they seem to give you the full quote that they want to use, as well as giving the footnote right below in case you want to go get some more context. I haven't really run into St. Therese yet in those few pages that we read, which is kind of interesting. But he's going to go back and go into different moments that he talked about already in that little introduction of that. So by page 7, it's talking about St. Therese's act of offering. Yeah, I really do think there's a lot. I can see a lot of theological terms in here, but I think that they're presented in such a way and in such a context that they're going to be accessible to all but the most beginner. I think that this is a pretty accessible book for somebody who's already done some Bible study, who has probably heard these words. Whenever it gives you a quote in Latin, it almost immediately, it's very short, and then it gives you the English translation right afterwards. I think that this is going to be pretty accessible. Yeah, I mean, everything from the Bible, even that's quoted, is literally quoted and then referenced below. So this is going to be, it's all you're going to need. You're not going to need, you can, but you're not going to need to drag your Bible there or the extra readings to look these up. You're probably more than welcome to, but I think it's a pretty comprehensive little book. I can see a lot of benefit in this. I did really like the way that there were some really complicated words in there, but the way that it was written, you could almost get from the context, the meaning of them. So I'm really encouraged by that. I think a lot of people are going to be freaking out at this, and I don't think they need to be. I think even if you don't end up doing the leadership program, I do think that this book is going to be enriching. Like I said, it's 20 to 30 pages at a time, but look how little is on any given page. I not really see, oh, there's one of the hyphenings. I'm not really seeing the hyphening words. Okay, there's one. Again, I don't know why they chose to do that. There's Pope John the 23rd. So this is a fairly modern book. Then bringing forward the traditions of St. Therese. It's interesting. It is a moment in time for the church, as well as bringing forward St. Therese's teachings. I'm interested in that moment of time. If you haven't noticed, I'm interested because it's that weird juxtaposition right after Vatican II and the old church and the new church, and we're just in such a period of time where that is such a discussion. And I think Therese being in that time is really going to do something for us, that she's in that moment with us now. And I think that's going to lead to some really interesting insights. And so I'm excited to begin it. Again, I haven't read any more than you just saw me read. I've been hesitating picking it up just so I could do this preview first. I know this is one of my longer ones, but this is really for people in my parish, and I hope other people have some benefit from it as well. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the good Lord bless you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.